Being Black in America comes with its challenges. However, we understand that enlightenment through education is the oppressor's worst fear. By bridging the gap between academia and the people, our purpose is to equip you with knowledge that breaks down barriers during your journey towards truth and freedom. Welcome to the Black and Highly Dangerous Podcast.
Yo, Dev, what's up? What's up? Happy 2023. It's been a minute.
It has been a long minute. I feel like we already deep into 2023, but I have missed the podcast. Of course, I've missed you, pal. How you been?
Oh, same here, Dav. Same. It hasn't been the same these past couple months on our little hiatus, transitioning to 2023. So it's good to hear your voice. I've been good. I've been busy. But Dav and I talked about a week or so ago. So I was just, we were just updating each other on life, and I was telling Dav this 2-kid game ain't nothing to play with. I think we kind of expected it. We had one, so okay, 2 shouldn't be that bad. And it's not the worst thing, but it's just like 2. I think that when people always talk about 2 under 2 kind of situation, I mean, mine is 2.5 and Miles is about to be 5 months now. And so it's just like a lot of time, a lot of energy constantly dedicated to them and very little time to ourselves when we're home. So, it is what it is. This is what we signed up for, all good things, and we are blessed for sure. But it has been quite busy in the Connor household.
I feel like when you have children, you have to figure out how to roll with the punches. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because have you heard of Marie Kondo?
Yeah, she's the I'm about to say the cleaning lady, but she's the one that helps.
Tidy, how to tidy up your life.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people years ago gave her pushback because, I think she had the message of anyone can find time to tidy and etc. And I'm sure you can guess that parents, kind of push back against that to say I don't have time. But it's interesting because I came across a tweet yesterday where she kind of came out and said that now that I have 3 children, things are a little bit different. I don't have as much time to tidy. And so I think we just have to give ourselves grace. Things change when you have not just 1 child, but 2 children. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting because, it's been 5 years, been very dedicated to this podcast. Life also happens. And I feel like toward the end of last year, we started having those conversations about how do we keep fulfilling this mission with the podcast while also balancing the other now personal missions around raising healthy children and other professional missions. We're both writing books. So, I think you should give yourself grace. I know you are, but also I'm pretty sure our audience is giving grace to both of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Daph. And I think Marie Kondo, I think it's kind of it's like this, when we're in grad school, it's kind of and you're in the PhD program. And so it's kind of this, I guess, subtle, fraternity, sorority type thing, right? So if you see other doctoral students, even if they're in different states, different countries, you kind of know oh, yeah, I know what y'all are going through, and you have this mutual respect. And so I feel like that's how it is with parenthood. It's when I interact and see other parents who are have young kids or have toddlers, or people here that we have toddlers and they may have 5 or 6 year olds, it's just kind of just oh, we feel you, we know where y'all at, and it's just funny. I never experienced that, pre-kids naturally, but people who have kids, you hear about it, you can try to understand their experiences, but it's you really don't know until you get there. And then when you see other parents, you all have this mutual respect for each other. So it sounds like that's what happened with Condos. Yeah, when she had some kids, okay, I thought I knew, but now I really know. And so, let me walk this back a little bit.
It's funny. That is why I have honestly, as I've been trying, going, on this parenthood journey with John, and I have friends, many of them who are not parents at this point. And, me telling them, like, I'm not willing to make you any promises about my time, while I'm like on this journey, because I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And to account for that uncertainty, to say, I'm going to do what I can,
Mm-hmm.
but I've watched enough people to know that you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's, I think you're, doing the right thing. I would say that, yeah, what does happen with the kids is like, okay, you got the kids, and that's of course priority. And then it's like only the other like really big things in your life are going to be priority. Like, well, like you're on the tenure track. Well, anything that pertains to that, outside of my kids, that's going to be important. Then my kids, and then everything else is probably going to be pushed way back down on the to-do list while that's happening. So I think you're right, thinking in that kind of like mind frame that whenever you get to that point, it's probably just going to be your tenure track items and then your kids, and that's it. That's all you're gonna be able to fit.
Ciao. And I hope other family and like maybe some fun. Have you been like incorporated into fun into your life, Terrell?
Yeah, fun looks different now. When you're a parent. Fun is like going to the park, or taking Maya out to see different things. We went to Disney on Ice not too long ago, a couple months ago. That was like her first time seeing that. It was the Encanto show, and it was Frozen, which is definitely one of her favorite movies. She loves singing Let It Go and spinning around the house when that song comes on. It's just very weird to me when it comes to children's songs, and it's like, it's just like, what about this song just has them hooked? And then, it goes, we know Let It Go, of course, was, a cult classic. And now, but this is years before Maya was even born, and she still hears that song, and then that's her jam, right? It's just weird to me, like the psyche of that, or what do they do or put in these songs to make kids love it so much? But anyway, yeah, fun looks a little different nowadays, but it's good. We are planning a couple of vacations this year, and one family vacation this year to Belize. So that's going to be fun to take the kids.
Y'all fancy.
Out somewhere. We haven't been out since pre-pandemic, Kristen and I. So we're like, listen, clearly we can't get rid of these kids. So we're just going to have to take them with us and get out and have some fun. So, Maya, we're fine with. We're a little, Miles will be like 7-8 months by the time we go. So we have a little anxiety about him on the plane for a few hours, but I think he'll be all right. We'll see. Because, one of the fears of parenthood is like being those parents on the plane and your kid is the one just wailing the whole time. And so we're trying to just like, figure out a way to make sure that doesn't happen. We got some time still to prepare, but that is the thought in the back of our mind. Like, please, no, not us.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people are understanding. It's interesting. And maybe it's because I was a teacher, but it's like babies gonna do what babies do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can, from the noise perspective, you can be like, oh, I thought I was gonna be able to relax. But at the end of the day, a baby gonna cry. Like I have neighbors who they had a baby sometime last year, and that baby be crying, but it's just kind of like, babies cry. Like, it doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. I was probably more irritated when they got a dog and it would just be barking uncontrollably. Like, it's just kind of like, but also dogs bark. So it's just like, and I want a dog too. So it's like, I put up with that as well. But it's just like, okay. But babies cry, dogs bark, you know.
Yeah. No, you get it, Dev. And I never was one tripping on the plane, because most of the time you're able to, like, I put my headphones on and I'm good. Like, I don't, unless the kid was sitting right next to me, which is, I don't think it's ever happened, but, I never was like tripping about it. But, there are some folks that do be trying to trip and aren't as understanding.
Yeah. But I have heard that as parents, like, if you want to travel, you just gonna have to take that baby with you, mm-hmm. because, I think my game plan, especially since we're moving to Tennessee, is if we can't or if, like, for instance, a family member is up to it, we can just drive 2 hours to Chattanooga and be like, can you get me for the weekend? Or it's kind of like, hey, anybody want a vacation to want to come to, like, be that extra hand for us?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that.
Future plan.
It's funny you mentioned that, Daph, because I am bringing my parents with us on this trip.
Yeah, that is how you do it. That is how you do it.
That is definitely how we doing it. My parents were more than happy. I was like, listen, we'll cover over a majority of the expenses. We just need y'all to come, and then y'all can stay with us. We got a little like townhouse thing situation. So, and they were more than happy to tag along and be with the grandbabies, on their first vacation too. So, they wanted to be there, so it'll be fun. And me and Kristen are also very excited to have those extra hands on deck.
Absolutely. That's like the game changer right there. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I had already decided was going to happen because I think about when we took my nieces to Disney World and, my sister and her husband, it was, their two daughters, but my mom and we also went on the trip with them. And it was just nice because it's like my mom, she was tired of riding rides. The youngest was like sleeping in, her stroller. And so my mom eating ice cream, the baby in the stroller, and we can all have fun while they just chilling. And it's like, it just changes, like you said, the way fun looks.
And it really goes back to that old adage, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise these babies up.
Absolutely.
So all good here, bringing in 2023, with smiles and, sleepy eyes, but we still smizing over here, as Tyre would say.
Yes, smize.
Oh, man. So to our listeners, we're glad to be back. We want to update you on a couple things, but first, we do want to just recognize this major feat that Daph and I have accomplished, which is, Daph already subtly mentioned this, is 5 years in the podcast game, PhD. We started February 2018, the first Wednesday of February 2018, because we wanted to make sure we kicked off this particular podcast on Black History Month. And it's 5 years later, which we both still can't believe. Here we are, still potting and still dropping knowledge and having fun. So clearly, this is something that we really love to do.
That is so wild. This podcast is the same age as my marriage. I just celebrated my 5th anniversary of my marriage. And so also celebrating 5th BHD anniversary, which from a podcast perspective, like, I think we deserve some type of trophy or something because I don't know if this happens that often.
Oh, yeah, I know it doesn't. I know there should be some kind of badge, trophy, something that we can post up that podcasters could have. Because I think most podcasts, some stat, like, within the first year, something like 70% of podcasts don't make it. And so, we've clearly exceeded those expectations. And here's still kicking in and having fun while doing it. So shout out to us celebrating 5 years in the podcast game and, still looking to grow, still looking to continue on, even with these life changes. It's funny, like you said, Daph, like 5 years being married, people getting degrees, people getting jobs, people getting tenure, people having kids. Like it's a lot. we've discussed and documented also while on this podcast in these past 5 years too.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, all the life changes and growth. I hadn't even started my dissertation research when we started this podcast. I didn't start that until the fall of 2018. And so it's just kind of like, through the data collection, through writing, through defending, through the year where I didn't have a job, through this postdoc, and now through the tenure track. And the same thing with you, like going from like no children to now you have 2, plus you have tenure, plus you're working on a book. And it's just like so awesome.
Yeah. No, it's been fun.
And we published a book.
Oh yeah, we also, how we forget that one? Yes, we did. The co-edited volume, Dark Side of Reform. Yeah, we did do that. And that was also, a result of this podcast. It was born, it was born from this. So yeah, it's been a wild ride these past 5 years. And it's also been good to, talk to you every week, Daph, and keep in touch and also, be a part of our journeys together, which can be tough, postgraduate school, keeping in touch with everybody. I have been happy and fortunate to have this, our relationships still continue to grow and be connected over these years.
Really? Because of this podcast, because I started at Purdue, I was like 25 going on 26, I think. So it's like, that's 10 years of friendship too.
Dang. Time really flies by. It's crazy.
Really, really. Which is, it's been so awesome. So yeah, the podcast has definitely been a blessing. One thing I've also appreciated about the podcast is like how many awesome people
Mm-hmm.
we have been able to meet and talk to as a result of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Just the conversations, the books we've read,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been amazing.
Yeah, no, that's been one of the other shining stars of this podcast, like you said. Yeah, because I don't know, we haven't sat down and did it, but I'm sure one day we might go down the list and just see how many people we've actually talked to. It's been a lot, and you can only imagine 5 years, over 200 something episodes. Yeah, it's a lot of interviews, a lot of folks we've been able to network and connect with. And thank you to all those folks who took the time out to come chat with us and drop some knowledge for our listeners, because not everyone's always willing to do things like that. And some people feel uncomfortable with those kind of things, and some people might even feel it's beneath them. But everyone who took the time to actually come chat with us, we appreciate you, and we don't, we never take that lightly.
Absolutely. And, of course, we have to shout out the listeners who have been like so supportive, the comments, even people like reaching out over, kind of our break to say like, hey, what's up? I haven't seen you on Facebook. Like I haven't seen the podcast like on Facebook or whatever it is. Like that just feels really good because it's kind of like, okay, we're missed. I like it.
Yeah, we definitely are. I remember that. I think I felt this one time, maybe a year or two ago, where for some reason our website was down for just a day or two. And people just slide in the DMs like, yo, everything good? What's going on? Y'all releasing this week? I was like, what's going on? I found out the website was down. So we got it back up, but it was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like people do listen, people do miss us, and they will reach out if we're not, heard from for some time, even though that was on our weekly cadence too. And people were concerned. So shout out to the listeners. Like you said, Daph, this would not be possible without you all, tuning in every week or every episode now at this point, to just, listen to us, engage with us, and, have fun with us.
Absolutely. You know who else I want to shout out? I want to shout out our spouses.
You right. You right.
Because, especially, releasing on a weekly basis. Do you know how many Sunday brunches, baby, we were able to like do? And just, I think about all the articles, like sometimes John would send me like, oh, have you seen this story? Plus both of our spouses even came on for an episode.
Yeah, no, we gotta shout them out. It's also definitely wouldn't be possible without their support and then putting up with us, which I know couldn't be easy all the time. Kristen would do similar things, seeing things on social media, passing our ways. And then also, it wasn't as bad when we didn't have kids, but then once Maya came into the picture, those Sundays became a little bit more hectic. And so taking out the time to come, she taking care of Maya while, I record and stuff like that became even more important to accomplish. So yes, you are 100% right, Dav. This is not possible without them as well. So shout out our spouses.
Shout out. And John, he even bought like my first pair of like podcasting headphones.
Nice.
And my first microphone. So it's just like very, very down for the cause from the very beginning.
That's true love right there. That's kind of support we talking about. Folks that help you get to your, get to your dreams, having a spouse that don't try to hold you down, but help you fly. So shout out to them for letting us follow our dreams and do what we like to do here on this good podcast. All right. So, outside of that, I think we can talk a little bit about what we intend to do before we talk about some of the major headlines, talk about what we tend to do for the next few episodes, or maybe for the rest. Maybe this will be the standard moving forward, which it probably will be. Like Daph and I said, a lot of life changes that have happened and will happen. And so what Daph and I are thinking about as far as the cadence for the podcast moving forward is to have it once a month, beginning in April. So we're going to not have an episode in March. Want to be clear about that. We just wanted to come back for the new year and also to celebrate our 5th year. And then those next couple of months, Daph and I will be getting things in order. They're trying to figure out the new cadence of the podcast, and how we would like it to look, etc. And so we just want a little time to, strategize and get that, done appropriately. So when we do return to you all back in April, it's nice and neat and nothing messy. We want to make sure the work we put out is of high quality, like it's always been. So just wanted to make you all know that we won't be going back to the weekly anymore. And like Dav said, this is kind of also thinking about the future, right? And what we can and can do, the bandwidth and things that we have. And so this monthly episode release seems like it'll be the best move for both of us.
Absolutely. And, we'd love to hear from you all if there's particular types of episodes or formats that just really, spoke to you. We've heard in the past, for instance, some of our informational episodes where we do like a deep dive into a topic. We've heard that people really like those. So if you have some thoughts on what you would like to hear in terms of like a monthly format, I'd definitely be interested in knowing.
For sure. Yeah. That's a good point. If anything y'all would like to see, like Dev said, bring that to our attention. And again, it's all fair game. So if it's interviews and, there are folks you want us to bring them on. I would say that because it is going to be just monthly, we're probably going to be very picky, more picky than we probably were in the past as far as the interviews. Not to say that some people aren't worthy, et cetera, but we want to make sure it's going to be a really engaging and compelling interview. And speaker, whoever's on with us. And so because we're only going to have so many episodes now a year, we have to be a little bit more careful of like who we bring on, because we're not going to be having that many episodes. So interviews are fair game, informational fair game, just talking about current events, whatever it is you all enjoy, let us know. And then, we'll try to make sure we integrate that in the upcoming episodes.
Absolutely. But if you have a podcast for over, 2 or 3 years, you have a lot of episodes. I think this is episode, 235. And one thing that I've often heard from listeners is like, sometimes, especially if they came on board later in the game, they haven't necessarily revisited all of our early episodes. So I feel like in the weeks that we do not publish an episode, there's still lots of BHD to dig into.
Oh, for sure. We got to figure out a way. We got to figure out a way to like highlight that. I know I've said this 1,000 times before, for us to like either put it up on social media once a month or something, like a BHD rewind, or at least just bringing attention to our past episode where you guys can just literally just click on and find it on the website and stuff like that. Because I think, like Dad said, we had some bangers in those first couple years for sure. And a lot of y'all came after that and have no idea what they were about. But a lot of that content is still very much relevant today. So we got to figure that out too. And we can probably do that in the next couple months.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about, a handful of big news items that have taken place. I wouldn't say since we've been gone, but definitely just in the start of 2023, there's been some major ones. I know there's one that we have to talk about, and I'm sure, Daph, you have that on your list. So I want to kick it over to you if you want to transition us into this particular story.
I assume you are referring to the Tyre Nichols.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I feel like, so we've been doing this for 5 years, and I feel like there has never been a year where we haven't gone without such a devastating injustice like this.
Mm-hmm.
Every year. And it's usually multiple times a year, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to start off a new year like this, it deeply troubles me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, I mean, we've said this before, and, it's just like, how many times do we have to see this? And it's like one of those things, like, you don't want to be desensitized to any of these travesties at all. But it happens so much, you can start seeing that take place sometimes. And it's just devastating every time. Like you said, it hasn't been a year, you're right. It's just really sad to think about this stuff. And we know we've seen these things even since, grad school, right? the whole George Zimmerman case way back then was one of the first marquee ones that got things moving. And like you said, every year since that, I think we haven't had the kind of peace, which is troubling in a lot of ways. But yeah, the Tyre Nichols case in Memphis, of course, has sparked a lot of conversation as he was brutally beaten by 5 police officers from the Memphis Police Department. I think it was a specialized unit known as Scorpion. And, they released the video. By the time this episode's aired, it'll be a few days, a week or so when it was released. But it's all kind of fresh here because it was just released this past Friday for us. And so it's definitely been, on every major news cycle and all the headlines and the talk on social media, et cetera. And so, so we're kind of living in this moment. So it's kind of good we're able to record right now where everything is still so fresh and raw and we're still taking in all the information. But for all that being said, it doesn't change the feelings we've seen with all these other cases. I know in particular, some point of the conversation has been that, hey, these were 5 black officers.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that, Daph, at that point in the conversation?
Well, it's Memphis, so like the demographics of the police officers is just not surprising to me. I'm from Tennessee, and Memphis in particular is considered probably like a chocolate city. I think people would want to assume that this type of situation would not happen with Black people or Black police officers. But if we are real, they are embedded in a system that cultivates a particular type of like disposition and particular potential response. So we think going back to one of our first episodes about Black and Blue. Do you remember? And like thinking about like, race when it comes to these types of issues is not black and white when they are navigating Black and Blue. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it's a lot. I think, because of the demographics, most of the law enforcement there are going to be people of color in Memphis. And I think that I remember so when I went to an HBCU, right, of course, race wasn't an issue anymore, right? As because everybody was of the same racial background. But, things like class became more of an issue, right? There were still privileges or power struggles within the community, although race wasn't. It didn't mean that everything was like this utopia of peace and harmony, right? There were still certain things going on. So I think that policing, now when you remove the kind of racial divide within policing, you see policing in its rawest form, which I think many activists and scholars have talked about. It's the institution. A lot of times, yes, it's those racialized instances that give us the most play in the news, right, and gets the most emotions out of folks. But even in those situations, folks, even myself said, like, this is an institutional thing. When I talk to my students about it, I said, it doesn't matter who wears the uniform. If the institution is not fixed, it will continuously violently oppress our people. This is, of course, most of folks I know have seen Boys in the Hood. And I always show like the first just 30 minutes to my class at one point in the semester. In particular, because there's this one scene that I think John Singleton did so intelligently. And it's the scene where Furious Styles is home and somebody tries to break in. You remember that scene, Dab?
Yes, I remember.
And so like he shoots the gun, is a big, he misses the person that was trying to break in his home. And there's a big like hole in the door. And then he calls the police and they're waiting for the police to come forever. And then what happens is a police officer and his partner show up, but it's a white officer and a black officer. But Furious engages with the black officer in that scene. And then the black officer, is pretty much not being a kind person overall. And then he says one thing like, well, did you hit him when he shot him? And Furious like, no, I didn't get him. He's like, oh, that sucks pretty much. It'd be like one less N-word on the street for us to worry about. And Furious kind of looks at him like, you don't even know, what this means or how you're coming off, because his son was there right there hearing about it. And I always ask my students why that scene was very important. Why didn't Singleton choose to use the white officer to kind of convey that message? And I think he did that intentionally to show that, again, it's policing as an institution, because if he would have had the white officer do it, everyone easily would have just said, oh, well, that officer is racist and all police officers are racist, etc. But having the black officer do, he says, no, this black officer who's part of this community is now, a part of the instrument to oppress his community and continue those racist actions. And so this is what this kind of reminds me of a lot, of that, these black officers who have an opportunity to empower their community, kind of drink the Kool-Aid and now become this oppressive force in their community that leads to similar tragic events we've seen all around the country. So I just point out that scene because I think it's very important that, he was clever enough to do that and make sure that his viewership, who was mostly going to be black, were able to see that. And it speaks to what we see today when we talk about police violence. It is police in general and not just the racial thing. Although there's a lot of racist and racial things a part of it, without a doubt, the system itself, it's when we talk about the system itself being racist and not just the people.
I love the way you put that and the example that you brought up from Boys in the Hood. I really also appreciated your point about like class differences in the Black community. I think it's something that we don't talk about a lot, and like those divisions that kind of create boundaries and barriers between people. So you might have those same, the commonality around race, but like lived experiences as well as like perceived commonality, that perception around linked fate. It might not be there if you are really leaning into potential class differences, which, based on what I know about Memphis, it is very like segregated in that regard. Like, yeah, those class differences shine through based on what I know about Memphis.
Yeah. It does not surprise me. And I'm sure that probably played a role in this particular interaction. I'm sure somebody's going to write about it, or it's going to be some op-ed. I appreciate some op-eds where people from these communities or either scholars or whomever write about, give us a little clearer picture of what is like the actual dynamics of the city are. Because I think, for most people, we're going to see like, oh, Black community, Black officers, how can this happen? And I think there's some class explanations for this too. Probably where they're policing, who they were targeting, et cetera. But all this to say that, another young Black person's life was taken at the hands of police. Did you see the video, Dav?
I did. I decided to refrain.
Okay. It was one of those things for me where I was like, I wanted to refrain, but I was like, the way the setup of how they automatically quickly indicted the officers, how they were prepping everyone about the video, I was like, I have to see what went down in this case, just to be aware. And watching the video, it was just, there's no explanation. It was a routine traffic stop. It was like this unit. They approached Tyre extremely aggressive. He was complying. They put him on the ground. He was just like, why are you doing this? Like, why you put me on the ground? Like, I'm down. Like, why y'all being extra, pretty much? And they just continued to escalate. Then they tried to like tase him. And then so he just gets up and he just ran away. And then they couldn't find him for some time. Then they wind up finding him. And then when they found him this time, then that's when they started to, aggressively beat him up. And so they had to, fortunately, there was this kind of sky cam. It was like, there's like police cams around certain cities. And so they have cameras on poles. And so I guess while the situation was happening, the local precinct was able to turn the camera to see what was happening because it was right there. And they turned it directly on them. And you see everything, like they're holding his hands behind his back as he's, handcuffed, punching him in the face, kicking him on the ground in the face, putting knees and backs on him, just essentially just brutally beating him, taking the baton out, hitting him. And all the while he's crying and screaming out for his mother. just devastating, man. And so like they initially showed just the body cam footage, and so the body cam footage looks real rough because they're running and they're doing all this physical stuff, so you don't have good visuals, but you hear everything they're saying. So you hear him crying for his mom, you hear the police saying your mom's not going to help you, she's not going to do nothing, yada yada yada. Them like fabricating their stories of what they're going to say, all those things. In the sky cam, there's no audio, but it has the clearest footage of like what actually went down. And so those have been the key videos that were released, and has everybody, protesting, and rightfully so, and being upset, and rightfully so. And in situations like this, I was thinking about the families too, of them having to relive this, because that's somebody's son that has to experience that experienced this and is gone because of this, and now it being just on the media. Although you do it so folks can see and be outraged and change can be made, there's still parents and siblings and friends who have to see this happen to someone they truly loved, which I think is always even more devastating than just us viewing it.
Honestly, based on what you described, it sounded like he was just genuinely afraid for his life. From like the tape, like running, because people might act like, why run? Like, we have all seen enough of these situations to where if I were in a situation and I was on the receiving end of what seemed like escalating, police force, I would be afraid as well. So like that was that flight, what it sounds like for him. Like I want to live. And to hear, that he was calling out for his mom, I think that was a similar situation with George Floyd. It's just wow.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, my heart just really goes out to him and his family, because like in that moment, I don't even know. I don't even know, Terrell, because it seems to me, based on that response, he saw where this was headed. And for you to know that, I think it's just devastating.
Yeah. No, it really is. It just really is. These police officers are on bail. They're out. They need, like, this is, I don't think they're going to get off at all. There's no way. Because everybody has denounced them. The chief has, like, there's no way. It's just wrongdoing. Actually, they're trying to get more people charged, because in the video, it was predominantly the 5 officers, but other officers came in the scene, offered no medical assistance. He was down there trying to, barely breathing for his life, in and out of consciousness. Medics didn't come handle him. Like, it was just like a lot of negligence, not just from these 5 officers, but the other 10 people that wind up being on the scene that you can see in the video. No rush to medical assistance, et cetera. So I feel like, yes, every last one of them should be held liable. And this is one of the biggest things and biggest concerns I always have with one of these cases, and why it's very hard for me to believe, like, when folks say there are good officers out there. Yes, I'm sure there are some, but it's like, especially when we've seen George Floyd and we see this going on with these officers, how can not one of them just be like, yo, stop this immediately, pull them back? Like, it's just like mind-boggling to me how warped their minds are from all these different people who were participating in this and just kind of watching and being bystanders, and no one just had the wherewithal to be like, this needs to end right now because y'all are doing the most. In all these situations, and that's all it would sometimes take just to save somebody's life, like a George Floyd, like a Tyre Nichols is one of those other officers to say enough is enough. But it just never really happens. And so now lives are lost because of it, because you were afraid to speak up.
I actually read a headline. I didn't read the full article, that Nichols' stepfather is potentially asking for more charges, particularly for the paramedics who he claimed failed to render aid for more than 20 minutes.
Yeah. When you watch the video, he's just down there on the ground, handcuffed, rolling around, in and out of consciousness. Nobody's tending to him at all. Everybody's talking. I don't know what they're doing, to be honest. Like, they're just talking. Everyone's just talking with one another. There's no one actually tending to him. Is the reason why everyone's actually there, because of that. And it was just, I don't know. It's sickening to see. And so yet again, like you said, Daph, this happens every year. Unfortunately, we know this is probably not going to be the last incidence of something like this, but it is the most recent. And it's just like, when will we see the change? When will we be able to say, hey, it's been 3-4 years since the last incident like this occurred? But most of the time it's 3-4 months before we see another one, which is the sad truth right now in this country.
Yeah. I think what we should consider, these cases have become more high profile because we have captured them on video.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, like, even when we think back to like Trayvon Martin, or like the cases that have blown up, like, is it just because we have been in an age of social media and been in an age of like video, surveillance, that these cases have garnered such attention, when I don't know if we've ever in our lifetime or in our grandparents' lifetime have gone a year where there hasn't been just devastating violence against Black people in this same type of way.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think this plays a big part now that we can see it, and social media certainly helps. But I think the bigger question for me is more so about change occurring. Because when we think about like the civil rights movement, and of course like video, when folks actually saw the video of the nonviolent protesters being violently attacked by law enforcement, fire departments, etc., that led to fairly swift change. And like you said, Trayvon, these are things 10 plus years of this over and over and over again. And it's just like, when is it going to lead to that change? That massive overhaul change of like, enough is enough. Like, we cannot see this, because clearly these officers seeing these incidences is not enough for them to just pause and be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't take it a step further, and they continuously keep doing it. And so I don't know. I think, to me, the threshold of being a law enforcement officer is too low. And I think that's something that everyone should jump on board with, is raising the standard of what it takes to be a law enforcement officer. How we have standards for like FBI and things like that. We just need to raise it. That's just point blank period. Because this is too much.
Agreed. But I feel like can you, based on like your research, your expertise, can you see departments and states and et cetera being willing to have more stringent criteria for selection, having better types of training? Like, can you see that happening, especially outside of like blue states and cities?
Well, that's why we probably need something at a federal level to mandate these things. I understand why. Let me be fair, because I know why there are some jurisdictions that can't have higher standards because they're small, right? So you're talking about rural communities, smaller towns, right? You might have 5-10 people on, so you're not just getting like this overwhelming amount of like interest in being law enforcement. So you're not going to have the highest standards to police such a small area. But I think it's very fair to say that in places like Memphis, places like New York, places like where we see in urban communities where we know y'all are not short of applications, then you can raise the criteria. I think we can be fair in saying it may not have to be across the board, but when you're dealing with multiple people, a lot of people, multiple demographics, I feel like the training threshold needs to be higher for these kind of reasons, for sure. But will it happen? We haven't seen it yet. We've seen a lot of strides, but it's going to take radical action for somebody just to finally do it, and enough is enough. And, there's been some stories of this happening too. I've started seeing white victims of police brutality as well coming out a little bit more. It never gets as much attention, but I've seen articles and clippings of it over these past few months as well. And so, I hate to say it, but that might be something that starts to also get the ball rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, I actually saw one case where he was a rail worker sitting in the truck, and a police officer came up to him and, got aggressive, and they tried to charge him. He ended up being like able to sue the city, but it was just interesting to see that story come out, because I'm sure that also happens quite frequently. But to what extent are people from different demographics willing to like put those stories out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's a class thing too. I think law enforcement are definitely more likely to do that in poor white communities as well, to have similar approaches to law enforcement than what we would see in a affluent community, a white person walking around a affluent community. So I think there's going to be overlap, and I think, yeah, we'll start seeing it, and maybe that'll lead to some more change. Because, the government don't want poor black folks and poor white folks coming together. We've seen that in the past. So they'll do all they can to nip that in the bud if that starts to look like it's a direction things are moving in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But okay, and that was, of course, one of the biggest stories that have happened as of recent. I don't know if there was something else that crossed your path, that you wanted to highlight.
Just saying that this Florida rejecting the African American Studies AP class,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's just something of note as we're going into Black History Month, and we are fighting to continue to have our history matter, like not just our lives, but also our history to matter. So, that's just interesting, and something of note that I think we should all keep our eyes on. The College Board stated that they were going to be releasing like the course framework in February. So I think that's just something to look out for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's important. This whole DeSantis nonsense, he actually did like a little address at the legislature this past week, and I was listening to it. And he's very much so a dangerous person. I think we all kind of know that. I think I remember the curriculum. I think the reason he was saying is because he felt the curriculum is politically motivated. Because they said, like, they talk about Black Lives Matter and things like that. I think, I don't know. I just feel like, and this is an interesting trend because he mentioned this. I'll say all this because he was talking about this in his, and I've seen actually cut like a New York Times article, something else about this, but he mentioned this in his speech too, is that like Florida has been, a lot of people have been moving to Florida, particularly from places like New York, et cetera. And I think right now, like New York and Florida have the same amount of people in the labor force. So like the economy, so like a lot of good things are happening for Florida because folks are moving down there and migrating down there. But he still talks very much law and order, pro police, actually talked about extending or like making the death penalty, capital punishment easier to get, and all these kind of things. And it's just like one thing I'm looking to see, and I don't know if he's conscious because he is having a lot of people move from like New York and from a lot of these more blue areas. And it's something when I see like, think of a place like Atlanta and like Georgia, how you saw a lot of people migrate and all of a sudden this red state started to turn purple and turning blue. I just wonder if we're going to start seeing that kind of change in Florida over this time as people are just flocking out there. Mainly, he was saying because his argument, people are flocking out there because he said Florida is a safer state, like crime wise, which is no one's moving to Florida because of crime. They're moving because it's cheaper and affordable and nicer weather. But it has nothing to do with the crime.
Not with all those Florida man headlines.
Yeah, exactly. All the wildest stories are, come in Florida. So I'm just paying attention to that because I think his constituency will begin to change a little bit. Ain't no way all these people coming from these highly populated places are going to be as extreme as he is. But he'll probably try to be president before that actually takes full effect. But I think I think Florida might be one of them states we'll see in the next few years that start seeing some changes politically.
Yeah, I said this a long while ago, and I think you said it too. DeSantis is a much more effective Trump. And that's scary. That is frightening because he knows how to get things done. And I feel like in red states, he'll have a lot of support. But you are right about these demographic shifts. The same thing is happening in Tennessee. Every day, California people are making their way, particularly to Nashville and places like that. And I do wonder how in years to come it will shape politics in the South.
Yeah. We'll see. Because, like I said, I live in New York, New Jersey. It's always tons of conversations up here how they're trying to keep people. People are leaving because it's just too expensive. It's clearly drop property taxes and then folks will stay. But y'all making it way too expensive to live up here. And so, yes, folks want to enjoy their life because you only get one. And so some places will just make that a little easier. So we shall see. But DeSantis, we got to keep our eyes on him. Him and Trump will be going at it, I am sure, soon for this 2024. Not 2024. Is it 20? It will be 2024, right? Yeah. Election. And we'll see who comes out victorious at that, which, of course, I know you and I, Daph, would not like to see any of them come out victorious. But I think it will put the Republican Party in a very interesting place because they're very alike. But like you said, DeSantis is more effective. But, many Republicans have been trying to pull away from Trump, but Trump still has that cult following. And so that's going to split votes and split their power a little bit. And I know the biggest question for us is will Biden just step down?
I feel like he should, but it don't seem like he will. And it seems like people are questioning whether he will keep Kamala Harris on the ticket if he does. I think somebody asked Elizabeth Warren about it. Don't quote me because I still got to read the headline, but saying something like she said, like, that's Biden's decision or something. So was it even a question? I did not know.
Oh. Interesting. We'll see. So much to unfold in this next year and a half, which I'm sure we will be talking about because it's going to be a lot, come 2024. Who will lead this country for another 4 years? Anything else you had on your...
Nope. Just excited to have celebrated 5 years with BHD Podcast. Happy that we were able to sign on and, give our listeners an update and ready to get the ball rolling again.
Yes, getting that ball rolling. I was just looking at my list. There's one thing I forgot I did want to talk about really quickly. Daph, had you heard about this Chat GPT?
Yeah, I have heard about it. It's kind of like sending shockwaves through academia, but also there was this story about how they were able to pass a business course. But also I read a little bit about it and I was like, maybe not.
Yeah. It's a lot. I remember it because at the end of the fall semester, the faculty listserv was on fire. It was just nonstop. They were act like it was text messages. Because one of the colleagues had put up an article and talked about an experience because I think he just caught a student using ChatGPT on one of the papers. And then folks were like, oh, what is that? And then it was this whole informational /shock /fear /debate on the faculty listserv for a week straight. So that was my first introduction to it, kind of end of the semester where I started to look into it. And of course it started to make headlines quickly after. My thoughts on it. And I just say all to say too, because Microsoft just closed the deal to buy the OpenAI, which is the company that makes Chat GPT, for a multi-year deal for $10 billion. And so that's something to just note that Microsoft, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, is now invested in this technology. Part of it too is that a lot of companies actually have this technology when I was reading about it, but many of them decided have not released it because it is not perfect in the sense that it just takes information from the internet, right? So a lot of this stuff and they have criteria on it where ChatGPT isn't that's kind of regulated a little bit. But it can spew racist information or extremely non-factual information, right? And so big companies like Apple, Microsoft, et cetera, Google, they can't take that risk, right? For them releasing a chat bot that all of a sudden it is spewing hateful things. So that's one of the biggest reasons that engineers haven't been able to figure out how to fully filter that kind of stuff. But OpenAI, which is a pretty small company, they were like, well, we got this great technology, and so we're not as big and we don't have as much to lose. So that's why they were able to release it. And then the more people that use it, the more information they gain from it, and becomes actually more accurate. But yeah, so I'm just I haven't played around with it yet. My brother has, and I know folks who have been messing with it. I've just been reading up on it. I think that this is something that, because I see a lot of folks like trying to run from it, but I think this is something that we won't be able to run from. It's kind of like that next big wave of technology, of invention, that will make things a lot easier, kind of like we see in futuristic TVs, right? You just have a bot or something that just talks to you and can have conversations with you and handle things accurately. This is just all it is AI. And I don't know. I don't know what I don't know how to use it yet, like what benefit it has. And I've read up on it, and some people use it for like creatively, like bouncing ideas, brainstorming, like marketers. You can put all kinds of stuff into it and just see what comes back to like spark ideas or directions with things. And so, and that's what the developers of it said that's what it's best used for, is just like for kind of like brainstorming, and if you're having like a creative block, typing it or whatever issues you're having in it to try to like spark something. But they said don't use it as if it's like fact, right? Yeah, because there's nowhere, it's not close to that kind of stuff yet. So I just want to throw that caveat in there, but I don't think this is going away anytime soon.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned, like not taking it as fact, someone actually posted like a reading list that the GPT produced. And although they looked sensible, like the names of the people and the types of articles it would be, they were completely made up citations.
Yeah. See?
So it's just kind of like, it's not perfect, but they were like, they look logical. And if someone didn't know any better, they could probably get away with it because.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's taking academics by storm, like teachers and stuff, because like, oh my God, they just assuming that students are going to use it for teaching, which for cheating, which I'm sure some students are going to try. But I saw it was like one funny response in that whole exchange going on, because people are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? How can we prevent this? And one professor was just like, we can just give exams in class, because everything is so online and automated nowadays. So it's like everybody was thinking in that way. It was like, just give an exam in person in class, and then you don't have to worry about anybody using a chat bot to help get the answers. I was like, very easy fix. So it's just funny how like you can just remove the technology and then not be so concerned and not having it be a headache. But it's like all these bright people and no one really thought about that simple solution, and everybody's stressing out about it. But yeah, I'm interested to see, how it evolve, how it'll change the game. I'm sure it will in a lot of ways. And I'm sure, like most technology and inventions, it'll find a way to make our lives even more convenient than it has been.
This is where we are now. And like you said, it's better to embrace it and like figure out how to work around it than to, just pretend it's not there.
For sure. But all right, that's all I had. Chat GPT was the only thing on my list that we ain't discussed. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it as it continues to grow and develop. But okay, good welcome back episode for 2023. Like you said, 5 years. We let y'all know the game plan. We will check back with everyone again in April, and hopefully give you a clearer update on what the structure is or what the new game plan. But for all we know right now, it's definitely going to be once a month starting in April. So we will not be back in March. Just want to make that clear again before we head out. Other than that, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being on this journey with us for these past 5 years. And hopefully you'll stay for the next 5 as we continue to do this thing. And if you haven't yet, you can follow us on social media at BHD Podcast is our handle. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can visit our website, blackandhighlydangerous.com, to keep up with all our latest content. You can email us, bhdpodcast@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns, like Dav said, ideas of things you would like to see us continue doing or implementing into the new format coming up. Please let us know for these next couple of months so we can try to integrate that in there. We're also on iTunes. If you listen to us on there, please leave a review and rating. That helps us out with the algorithm so that more people can find us. And then after you do that, please go ahead, share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your enemies. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.
If you're interested in continuing this and other conversations, visit our website, blackandhighlydangerous.com, to subscribe to our email list, suggest topics, and participate in our discussion forums.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BHD Podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast on your favorite platform. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.